Welcome back to another episode of The Untold. I'm your host, Jane Al-Athari, and today we're going to be joined by a guest we've had before, Dr. Ayesha Kamal, who, does psychotherapy, but also apparently has a background in jiu-jitsu, which I'm very curious about.
Yeah, honestly, when we finished our conversation with her in the previous episode, she talked all about her martial arts, her self-defense classes, and how she has an entirely different world to her. So we thought, hey, let's bring her together. Let's sit down. Let's talk about this other side of her, outside of the medical field, and see how all of this interesting kind of, I would say, journey has come about. That being said, Jane, we are going to take a break before we come down and sit with her. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, on The Untold with our guest today, Dr. Ayesha Kamal. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here on The Untold.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be back.
It's wonderful to have you. I so loved our conversation last time. I feel like it really hit parts of me and I got to know myself a bit more as well. And so first I want to talk about, your role as a psychotherapist. You help patients deal with trauma a lot. I think trauma is a kind of thing that can be really big or really small, but affects people regardless. So I did want to ask you, for someone who's experienced trauma, how does it show up in everyday life and how can people kind of overcome it even when the danger has passed?
That's a really good question, and it's a bit complicated because
I can imagine.
trauma itself, it's such a big word, but it can affect people, and it does affect people differently. So it depends on what kind of experience a person has had. Yeah, so it depends on what kind of trauma the person has had. And the thing that we want to remember is that it's actually not about the experience. Anyone can have an experience. For example, one of the most common things is a car crash, but it's going to affect people differently depending on what kind of resources they have, what kind of resilience factors they have within themselves. And the good thing is this is something that you can learn over time, but initially, this is where it can show up in their day-to-day life. If you don't have a strategy, if you weren't prepared, and a lot of times we're not prepared when it comes to trauma, it hits us suddenly, which is why it is actually traumatic. But when you're able to look around and see that, you know what, I can ask this person for help, I can draw on this resource, that's when we can build from the trauma. But in terms of day-to-day impact, it depends. Sometimes people are just hyper vigilant. Other times they feel like they can't function. And sometimes people go on through their day, but they're just a little bit muted through the day.
And this is even when the danger passes.
Even when the danger passes, because the danger is usually in one instant. So the danger has already passed, but you live with the impact, the memory, the way it lives in your body. And those are the things that you have to deal with. And a lot of times we don't think about that. We don't think about that, oh, I had this experience, but suddenly sounds are affecting me now. It's like, how are they related? But the thing is that our body, we have senses, right? And our body processes through different senses.
And speaking about processing stuff and dealing with stuff, what could be the first, steps to make recovery from a person who has trauma or suffering from trauma? Like what those first initial steps could be or look like?
I would say that the first thing is to actually acknowledge that something is a bit off, right? So a lot of times we end up normalizing our behaviors and our sensations. We think, oh, maybe I always wake up with a headache, or I always feel nervous when I go into crowds. And so we can kind of minimize it, but we want to actually acknowledge that, wait a second, this may not be the healthiest way that I'm expressing myself. So once we can figure out how we are manifesting our response, that's when we can start to tackle it. So sometimes it's with slow exposure therapy, just bit by bit going into crowds. Other times it's just connecting to our breath, because a lot of times trauma just makes us feel scared. And we don't want to have that sense of fear when we go out. And the first place we want to feel safe is in our body.
I feel like that makes a lot of sense. And I think also it's not a one size fits all. So it's like very individualized. Like each person will experience trauma differently and will recover from it differently. As you said, it's like in our body. So even if your mind thinks you're okay, your body always remembers, it doesn't let go of things. And it's up to you to kind of address that. And I heard that you actually also combine psychotherapy with self-defense. So do you find that physical empowerment is an important part of healing?
The link actually came by accident, I guess, in the sense that it was through, personally, like through addressing fears that I ended up learning self-defense. But that's when I actually saw the relationship, because a lot of times you can't protect yourself if you still feel afraid, if you still feel vulnerable. And at the same time, it's that feeling of vulnerability that may cause you to actually be proactive about managing your surroundings. So it's not exactly psychotherapy and self-defense, but there is a lot of overlap in terms of mindset, in terms of healing, and definitely in terms of empowerment, owning our body, owning our space, and being able to walk into a space without fear.
And also, mashallah, our producer said that you have brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I do want to ask you, how did that path lead you to this specific martial art? And what made you stick with it? What made you dedicate a lot of effort, time, a lot of physical activity into it?
Sometimes I ask myself the same question. I can't understand how I'm still doing it. I think it's the one thing that I've stuck to my whole life. So, I mean, going back about 10, 12 years maybe, it was, again, this idea that I had a lot of anxiety, I had a lot of fears, and I told myself one day that I just don't want to be afraid anymore. And I had this specific scenario in my mind that I don't want to be trapped one day and not be able to escape. And so researching the solution to that led me to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I was not an athletic person. I had none of that in my background. But suddenly Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu kind of came to my attention because they said it's not about strength, it's not about speed, not about athleticism, it's about timing, leverage, and making your body work for you. So that's how I started. And that's also why I continued. I started Jiu-Jitsu much later in life, and even when I train here, most people are half my age. So it's not easy to show up knowing that I'm, twice their age. But it's not about them, it's about me, right? It's about understanding what my body is capable of. And I think it's been that curiosity of what more can I do that keeps me going. And it's also a test of my own resilience because I've had a lot of struggles along the way, a lot of health issues, a lot of life circumstances, a lot of loss, the grief that we talked about before that has come up, but I still show up to train. And that reminds me that, not only is life worth living, but I am worth fighting for.
I love that sentiment that you got from it. And it is something so unexpected as well. I mean, we were talking a bit before the episode about how people don't think you would be doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Like, you're such a calm person, your mannerisms are so delicate sometimes. But Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it sounds not violent, but it's more aggressive. But as we were talking about, physical empowerment shows up differently for everybody. And the fact that you're able to use this to kind of help you I guess, regain control of your body and your surroundings. So you find that your relationship with fear has changed a lot since you started training?
100%. Yes. It's really interesting how you can look at situations really differently when you know that technically you could kill a man with your arms or legs. It's like, okay, well, what's the worst that can happen? And that's one of the things. A lot of times we don't speak up for ourselves or we don't assert ourselves because we're afraid of the consequences. But when I think about, well, what's the worst that can happen? And then I realized that, I have a technique for that. I can defend myself in a worst case scenario. It allows me to take chances more.
And speaking about techniques, like we mentioned, you did have brown belt. So what does having such a belt, mean to you, on a very personal level?
On a personal level, it is about commitment. Again, I mentioned that I had a lot of interruptions in my training, but I kept showing up. And I have to give credit to the different places and coaches that I trained under because they never made it impossible for me to go back. They didn't say, oh, you haven't trained in 6 months, it's a lost cause. Instead, it's been the opposite. It's like show up and keep trying. And it's very much about really accepting myself for who I am. Again, I don't have that typical athletic look, which is fine. And that's the beauty of jiu-jitsu, that anybody should be able to defend themselves. So it's not that, you have to look a certain way or be able to perform at a certain level to protect yourself. In fact, jiu-jitsu teaches you how to modify techniques to make them work for you. And I think that accessibility is what kept me coming back, that it didn't matter. It's like, you have a, injured wrist, fine. You find a different way to train. You can't do a backward roll, that's fine. You find a different way to move. And that in itself, it's like always looking for an opening, always looking for possibility. That's what kept me going back. And I found that really translated into my outside life as well.
Well, I feel like it's really amazing that you're able to keep committed to it. And I think in general, in terms of healing or any part of our lives, just kind of showing up for it, just committing, just kind of doing it, even if you don't feel like it, even if you've maybe stopped for a bit, you go back. I think people really underestimate the power of just, persevering sometimes. you know, it's not a linear thing, healing. It's up, it's down. There are days where it feels like you've gone backwards, you've gone forwards. People really just expect, I guess, really fast results to things, but it takes time and it takes dedication.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned that it helped your life outside of training as well. So how did you find that, you know, jiu-jitsu helped you in your life outside?
The first thing is a lot of patience. A lot of patience. It takes time. Usually, one of the first questions people ask me is, how long did it take for you to get your brown belt? And I hesitate to answer that question because my journey is completely different from somebody else's. You can't compare yourself to someone who's half your age, who's been training since they were 9 years old. You know, it's different. So that's one of the first things, to remember that my life experience is different, your life experience is different, and yours. So that reduces that stress of comparison. You just take life for what it is for you. And the other thing is just some kind of core principles that jujitsu has, always looking for an opening, always practicing being patient and not rushing to do something, because if you rush in jujitsu, you may get injured. And when you get injured, you're not going to train. And then you do fall behind, right? But this is the idea of there's always an opportunity, but can you relax and wait under pressure? It's so difficult, you know, because our first instinct is to panic, it's to fight. But that's one of the biggest things that jujitsu taught me, that how can I be patient when things are not going my way, things are not in my control. But it's almost like if I wait enough, that opportunity will arrive, and then I have to be ready to act. So it's about being patient, but also being ready to move when the time is right.
Speaking about the principles of jiu-jitsu and the things that they taught you, have you ever able to take those disciplines and principles and apply them to your daily job, daily work, and make it bleed into that kind of work? Or do you have a complete separation between the two personalities?
Actually, the opposite. For sure, they're integrated. So there are a few principles that come to mind when you ask that question. The first one is manage the distance, manage the damage. So the first thing about jujitsu is we actually don't want to get involved in an altercation, in a physical fight. So if you manage the distance, then you can manage how much of an impact it has. And I take this as something as simple as social situations. If you manage the distance between you and somebody you don't like, then you manage the damage that it could have on you. So it's the same thing. Don't get into situations that can be uncomfortable, that can put you in compromising situations. That way you can mitigate the outcome of it. Yeah.
You know, I love that. I feel like it's always about like prevention is key sometimes. And it's sort of
Absolutely.
like you don't have to fight all the time or go against the grain or make things kind of more difficult for yourself. Like the idea of having to pause, to kind of take a step back, to assess, to kind of feel like, am I reacting or am I really feeling something about this? Because we all get reactive to a lot of things. And I think what you learn as you get older is it is like you're allowed to feel what you feel, but how you react makes a really big difference in the grand scheme of things, because you choose where to put your power, where to put your energy. And I think that is something that you kind of only gain with age and with maybe seeing the right help and, you know, I guess finding things like jujitsu or whatever it is that kind of works for you. We are going to take a really quick break and I hope we can talk some more. It's like so cool that you do this, and I feel like, you know, maybe I should try jujitsu now. What do you think, Abdullah?
Yeah, probably.
So stay tuned for after the break. Want to do, and with that you can kind of get to a better mental and physical well-being.
It was, right? Very well said, Lejane. You know, I couldn't have said it any better, so I'm not even gonna try to. With that being said, that's it from us, the team of The Untold. Until the next episode, ladies and gentlemen, goodbye for now.
Goodbye and see you next time.
Level up, yeah, we back on the screen. Controllers ready, living out the dream. From the lobby to the top, we don't play slow. Every round we go hard, let the whole world know. Press start, no breaks, we're in the zone. New games, new wins, yeah, we own the throne. If you came to compete, better step it up, cause it's game time now. Time to level up.
What's up, gamers? Whether you're playing to relax, compete, or just escape into another world, you are in the right place. Today we've got 2 games to break down. We'll go through the story, gameplay, visuals, sound, and of course give you our final verdict. So let's kick things off and press start.
Time to level up.
Pet World Wildlife America is an animal care simulation released in 2021 where players work as a caretaker in a wildlife rescue center. The game focuses on rescuing injured or lost wild animals and helping them recover before they return to their natural habitats. Instead of domestic pets, the animals in the rescue center include species commonly found in North American wildlife such as deer, foxes, raccoons, and other forest animals. Players perform daily care routines that include feeding animals, cleaning their habitat, and providing treatment when animals are injured. As animals recover, they can eventually be released back into the wild. The gameplay emphasizes responsibility and environmental awareness while encouraging players to help protect wildlife. Pet World Wildlife America provides a calm simulation where the main goal is to care for animals and support their return to nature. The gameplay takes place in a wildlife rescue center located in a forest region of North.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, on the conversation segment of the Untold. Now, Dr. Aisha, I do want to talk to you about something because when it comes to martial arts and self-defense, you know, a lot of beginners make a lot of mistakes, or have a lot of misconceptions. Like, what could those be, you know, the mistakes, the misconceptions, the things that they do incorrectly, you know, talking about specifically when it comes to beginners?
I'll start with the misconceptions. Misconception is that there's a timeline. And just as I think you had mentioned earlier, that healing is not linear, training is not linear. There's no timeline that in 6 months I'm going to get my blue belt, in 8 months I'm going to get this. It doesn't work that way. And I think that if you come in, and maybe this goes into the mistake, that if you come in with that mindset, then you're almost setting yourself up, not for failure, but maybe for struggle. So allowing yourself to go with the flow, allowing yourself to learn and take the opportunities as they come. And maybe another misconception is about the fact that it's violent, you know, because if you just take a snapshot and look at jiu-jitsu, maybe a tournament, yeah, they're competing. So they're giving their all for about 5 minutes, right? But that's not exactly how the longevity of jiu-jitsu plays out. It can be a slow game, it can be a fast one. But again, it's about training in a way that allows you and your training partner to stay safe. When it comes to a real street fight, that's something completely different. But in terms of training itself, it's about slowing down, being patient, and being very aware of your body, of your partner's body, and how you can continue to excel without hurting each other.
I think that's a really great way of looking at it. And I think a lot of people, I guess, you know, you're right, they have these misconceptions about martial arts, about self-defense. And I do want to ask you because, you know, as women, I feel like sometimes we face really unique challenges or mindsets about self-defense or martial arts. So do you find that a lot of women maybe have more of these misconceptions or more challenges when it comes to these things?
I think the short answer is yes, but it's definitely more nuanced than that, particularly with something like jiu-jitsu, where I mean, you can't practice it at a distance. You have to touch another human being. and that is sometimes uncomfortable, you know, but that is exactly what's necessary. And one of the lessons we're trying to teach is that we want you to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations. right?
Such
So
a hard lesson.
it's very hard. It's very hard. And then you add the fact that somebody else is almost trying to kill you. You know, they're trying to break your arm, they're trying to catch your neck, and that heightens your alertness. And for women, that can be really challenging. And when it's a male-dominated sport, which it is, yes, women are definitely increasing on the mat, but it's still a male-dominated sport. And there were many, many times wherever I've trained that I've been the only female on the mat, and there are all of these men. In fact, the first class I ever taught, I was the one female 5'2" teacher, and it was like 17 men in front of me. And I was like, wow, I'm going to teach these men how to fight. You know, it's a little bit bizarre, but again, the techniques are applicable to anyone. But just going back to the women's factor, you know, this is also a really good practice in us knowing ourselves and our body, and also trusting our gut instinct. When is something safe? When is someone safe? How can we push ourselves? And when do we need to pull back without blaming ourselves?
I love that.
Yeah, and also, you know, speaking about that ratio between males and females, you know, I'd imagine that self-defense classes are so integral to both, you know, sides of the equation, both males and females. So why do you think that there are less number of females taking these classes, even though, you know, self-defense is something naturally instinctive with a lot of us?
That's a really good question. I think, first of all, it kind of started as a male-dominated sport, and so once it gets going in that direction, it's kind of hard to find momentum. And the other part is the fact that it's so physical, and it's quite vulnerable. You're on the ground, you're rolling around, you know, there's no other way kind of out of that. And that can make somebody feel maybe a little bit uncomfortable. So it takes time to get over your own self-consciousness and vulnerability to actually like lie down. It's very difficult to just lie down on the ground and say, okay, this other person is just going to jump on top of me and I don't know what's going to happen. It even sounds weird, right? It's
Actually
not
sounds a
easy.
bit scary as
It
well.
sounds scary, yeah, and it can be scary, which is why, again, finding the right training environment is really important. But I think that's also what keeps women away in the beginning. So the wonderful thing is when you see another woman on the mat, then it's an immediate bond, and it's not just about women training women, it's also about men and women learning how to interact with each other, even if you don't train together, but it's about making a safe environment, a respectful environment, and knowing how to advocate for each other's safety.
Yeah, I actually want to go back to something you said. You said that you also taught jujitsu?
Yes.
I thought you just did it. So tell me more about how you started teaching it as well.
Well, one of the things was I actually had some time on my hand. I was training a lot at the time, and my instructor said, well, since you have time, come and teach the kids class. I have to tell you, that was terrifying for me because they're the cutest little 5-6-year-olds, and they're like in their jujitsu gi and they're running around, and I thought, I'm going to step on one of them and break them. But they're the ones that taught me a couple things. One, wow, kids are so resilient. You know,
Yeah.
they hit the ground and they bounce back. I'm like, okay,
They're made of rubber.
they're made of rubber.
They haven't learned that fear yet.
No. So I have learned that fear and I'm not made of rubber, but they taught me how to kind of go along with it. And the other thing that I learned from teaching kids was not to take myself so seriously. I was not a goofy person. They helped me lighten up, and that really helped me just in life in general, that okay, I don't have to be so serious all the time. And then it translated to just teaching general adults, and then a specific self-defense class for women, which focuses on the defenses to the most common attacks against women. So usually in street fights, you'll get, maybe for man versus man, it'll be punches to the face. Doesn't happen that often as the first thing for women, but we have to think about other things, like suppose someone grabs my wrist, suppose someone grabs my hair. These are the kinds of defenses. So that curriculum I found was really, really powerful, and it took us through all the different scenarios that most women go through. And the curriculum is based on studying live reports, like police reports. What do women go through? And then the defenses were based on that.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
you
really
know,
cool.
it is, and I think that's a really important way, not only to practice these kind of martial arts, but also to promote them and market them towards a lot of females. Because I'd imagine if they look at it as self, you know, defense in a lot of situations that many of them, you know, could face whenever they're traveling or here, it could appeal to them more than when you say it's a physical sport, it's a contact sport, it's a fighting sport. You know, looking at it from a self-preservation kind of point of view instead of a sport kind of view. But I do want to ask you, on the topic of teaching students, they say that martial arts builds confidence in a lot of students and a lot of people and changes them. So have you noticed that? Have you seen that build of confidence, that change in the way they carry themselves in students, or is that something?
Absolutely. And that's been the most rewarding thing. Like, again, I've taught men and women, but I'll talk about my women's only, like, self-defense courses that I've been teaching. And every single lesson, I would say women leave feeling more confident. And you can see it in their posture. They all walk out taller. And if I can share one specific example, I had a student who, I didn't know this in the very beginning. She was coming, training, and then one day I was teaching choke defenses. Just if you were pinned up against a wall, someone was choking you, what would you do? And she froze. She's like, I can't. I said, fine. We just moved on. And then later, like maybe a couple months later, she told me that this had actually happened to her and she wasn't ready. Okay, this is when the trauma comes up, and it's like, fine. One day she told me she was ready to learn. I taught her the defense. And the next lesson, she came to me and said, you know what? I've been having nightmares about this, but last night I dreamt about the situation and I defended myself. I used the technique and she just was no longer afraid. And that is the most concrete example that I've seen, that we have all of these fears and insecurities that maybe we don't know what's happening, but our body remembers. And Jiu-Jitsu helps bring it out. And when we know that we have an answer, that's when the confidence starts to come out.
I think that's wonderful. And I think it's a really amazing way to show how, the lessons you learn, the things you do can actually have a lasting impact on you, can actually help you move past trauma and other experiences. I think that's what you're all about as well. So to be able to have that example is just an amazing thing. So I do want to ask you though, like in terms of, let's say people who want to start doing something more physically empowering, like self-defense or other things, especially if they've been through traumatic experiences, do you have any advice or tips for them to kind of get them on the map per se?
I would say start with doing your research because training environment does matter. And I would speak to the coach, whoever the coach is, talk to them first, share whatever you feel comfortable with sharing, and take your time. Sometimes I've had students who say that, you know what, I just want to watch. I said, fine, just watch. Sometimes it goes from watching to I'm just going to sit on the mat. I'm not going to do anything. That's fine. So when they also see that the coach is willing to move at their pace, that's when the trust comes up. And then that's when they can take a chance that, okay, I know that this person trusts my limitations, they respect my limitations, and now that I feel safe, I can move forward and try and train. So take your time and find a good place to train.
What about people who are on the fence? They want to learn, they want to go into self-defense classes, they want to learn martial arts, they want to learn how to defend themselves, but they have those social anxieties, they have those, like you said, it's the ratio between males and females in these kind of rooms are so imbalanced. What do you have to tell those kind of?
A couple of things. One is, again, kind of go and watch a class and see what it's like so that you have a more concrete idea of what jiu-jitsu is. And the second thing, and this is the beauty of social media maybe now, I've reached out to women jiu-jitsu grapplers that I don't even know and just had a question like, how did you do that? Or how did you overcome that? And because you have that accessibility to that community and we're looking for more women to join us, I think that's a really good way to reach out and have somebody reassure you that it's okay. And we have to remember that when we're a beginner, we're a beginner. You're not going to show up on day one and be a black belt. I'm not even showing up as a brown belt, with that level. Everyone is learning all the time, and that's okay. So it's really about being gentle with yourself and trusting the timing.
Yeah, I feel like that's really good advice. And I do want to ask you because I think a lot of people have different notions of what empowerment is. So what is true empowerment to you?
To me, it would be self-trust. True empowerment for me is self-trust. It's knowing that when I make a decision, it's the right decision for me. It doesn't matter what anyone else is saying. It doesn't matter how they're evaluating me. This is my call, and being brave enough to do it. And understanding that if it doesn't work out, that's okay. I can bounce back. I trust myself enough to be able to pick myself up off the ground.
Yeah, I think that's a very beautiful message to wrap the conversation on. So I do want to thank you for dedicating the time, Dr. Ayesha Kamal, for saying that and also for joining us on the Untold.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
It was such a pleasure talking to you again. I love learning about these different things, and I think it will really help the audience to kind of integrate these lessons themselves and maybe try something new. You never know.
You never know.
With that, we are going to take a quick break. And we're back from that break. Honestly, Abdullah, I had so much fun talking to Dr. Ayesha again, the way that she uses psychotherapy to help people through trauma, but then she brought up a whole new side of physical empowerment and how it's kind of connected to the mental side as well. And she uses jujitsu to kind of feel better about herself, to feel safe in her body. And I was surprised that she doesn't just do it, but she teaches people as well.
Yeah, honestly, I really love that aspect of this conversation, right, that we've had, because for me, self-defense and martial arts, I've been a watcher and follower of martial arts for so many years, but as you know, when it comes to the broad idea of taking it from a self-defense kind of point of view, especially when it comes to women and females in general, taking these kind of important classes to them, I feel like that was a very important topic, and I really was, glad that we sat down and talked all about it today.
I am too, and I think especially, I understand like a lot of women be afraid of this. We think it's going to be very aggressive, something that we're kind of raised not to do sometimes. But to see that she's someone who is so calm and actually works so hard on the mental side of things and psychotherapy, but she's able to do it and teach it. She has a brown belt, mashallah. Yeah. So it's kind of really inspiring to know that you can use it to kind of better yourself, feel safe in your body, and also that anybody can do it. It's all about just kind of persevering and keeping true to what you want to do. And with that, you can kind of get to a better mental and physical well-being.
It was, right? Very well said, Lejane. I couldn't have said it any better, so I'm not even going to try to. With that being said, that's it from us, the team of The Untold. Until the next episode, ladies and gentlemen, goodbye for now.
Goodbye, and see you next time.